Hi everybody, my name is Heather Thorstensen and I am the Manager of Communications for Sigma Xi, the Scientific Research Society. Welcome to our Google Hangout today. The topic of this Hangout is communicating science using video, Tumblr, and other social media. We're going to be talking with Dr. Joe Hansen of It's Okay to Be Smart. But first I'm going to give you some background about why we wanted to do this Hangout and also talk with you about things that you can do with the information that we're going to be presenting. Let me just pull this up here. So for those of you who don't know Sigma Xi, we are the International Honor Society of Science and Engineering. We're the ones that are hosting the Google Hangout today. If you don't know about Sigma Xi or you want to learn about becoming a member, you can check out our website at www.sigmaxi.org. We're active on social media. Our Twitter handle is at Sigma Xi Society. We have a Facebook page at facebook.com/SigmaXi and our Google Plus page, which you're all using today to join our Hangout. Today I have enabled the question and answer app, which means that during this Hangout you can type in your questions on the right side of your screen and you can vote for the questions that you like. We'll be taking those questions after Joe gives his presentation. One of the things that you can do with the information that you're going to learn in this Hangout today is participate in our Student Research Showcase. It's an online competition for research presentations, and it's open to graduate, undergraduate, and high school students. What you do if you participate is you make a 2 to 3 minute personal video, you also present your abstract, and you make a technical slideshow on a web page. And judges give feedback to all participants. The deadline to register for our Student Research Showcase is March 16th. The judging runs from March 23rd to March 29th. If you want to learn more about this, check out the website at sigmaxi.org/student-research-showcase. And if you're not a student, so you're not eligible to participate, you can still spread the news about it. And if you know any students, just let them know about this opportunity. It's a great way for them to develop their research presentation skills without taking the time or expense to travel to a conference. If you're interested in science communication in general, other resources that might be interesting to you is another Google Hangout that we're going to have next Friday. We're going to be talking with Dennis Meredith. He's a science communicator and author, and he's going to be talking about using visuals to communicate science. You can find more information about this Hangout on our Google Plus page, which you used to join our Hangout today. We also talked with Catherine Pyman. She was the graduate division winner of last year's Student Research Showcase, and we asked for her advice about research presentations and her advice for students who are going to participate in the Student Research Showcase this year. And you can find that interview on the Student Research Showcase webpage. When we were promoting this Google Hangout, we were saying that Jamie Vernon, my colleague, was going to be on with us today. He's not going to be able to make it due to other commitments, but he is the editor-in-chief of Sigma Xi's magazine, American Scientist, and this is a magazine that has stories written by researchers about topics going on today. So check that out at americanscientist.org. Our speaker today is Joe Hansen. Joe is a biologist and science writer based in Austin, Texas. He is the creator, host, and writer of the PBS Digital Studios YouTube series and award-winning blog, both called It's Okay to Be Smart. His YouTube channel has approximately 310,000 subscribers. It's Okay to Be Smart is a multimedia exploration of science that combines education and entertainment. Recent topics he's covered include how many heartbeats do we get, why vaccines work, and the science of Game of Thrones. He is on Twitter, and you can also check out his blog at itsokaytobesmart.com. And with that, I'll hand it over to Joe so that he can say hi and start his presentation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Heather. Yeah, my name is Joe Hansen, and I am an internet storyteller. I make this thing called It's Okay to Be Smart, which is mostly a video series these days, but has tentacles that reach out into every social media website that's out there, including mainly Tumblr was where the blog started there that evolved into this this YouTube series. There's our first science reference for the day. So YouTube and Tumblr, I think I'll focus on today. This is an educational project. It's okay to be smart, and the mission is to not only make people understand more about science, but also to appreciate its value more and to know how it intersects with their life, why it might be important for them to not only study it, but to make it a part of their everyday experience. That, of course, has ramifications into policy and various issues showing how, and technology and innovation. But to do that, I try to get some emotional response out of people to make them really care about this as more than just delivering information about a thing. And the ways I do that are whether trying to bring up feelings of wonder or humor or surprise or satisfaction that they learn something. These are all emotional responses that help people get something more out of that experience of science communication. I don't think it's a problem today that people don't have interest in science. We see a lot of good TV shows like The Big Bang Theory, the reboot of Cosmos. These things have huge audiences. It's just a matter of how we're communicating these things to people and doing it effectively. My main influences are what we would call polymaths or Renaissance people that are artists and poets and storytellers. The sort of Carl Sagan type science communicators that reach into history and humor and wonder and art and all of these and find interesting characters as ways to translate these science stories. So the stories I tell about science are about science, but I don't think that I view my work differently than, say, a screenwriter or a newspaper journalist does. We put words and pictures together to make people care. So I did work in the lab for a long time, for about 10 years worth of scientific research. So I use that experience as knowing how things work on the inside as a way to help people learn how to get their science to the outside. And we don't talk about science with the public the same way that we talk about science with each other as scientists. Making an effective science communication project is more than just telling people about your thing. You're becoming the interpreter, really turning your science into a completely different language. So today I'm going to show a few things, kind of my philosophy for storytelling and video, and how video on the internet, when we're doing science communication projects there, is a very specific kind of thing. Let's see, I'll work over to, so I can do the fancy screen sharing that we did before. There we go. So this is where you can find my various projects. You can follow the show and me on Twitter, or check out the YouTube channel there at /itsokaytobesmart. Making an effective science communication video, like I hope that many of you will for the Student Research Showcase, is more than just turning on your camera and explaining your research clearly into the camera. If you really want to make an effective science video that is accessible by the public, you have to make people ask, why do they care? They need to know why this matters to them. It's not enough for them to understand the information and for it to be logically sound and for them to be able to go to point A to point B to point C. They need to know why this research means something and why it was not only important to you, but that they should be spending time hearing about it. And as you go into this, you should figure out what exactly it is you're trying to accomplish. There's a lot of different kinds of science videos. We can be persuading. We can be spelling things correctly. There's criticism. The same things that we do in peer review can be done as part of these science communication projects. And a large part of what we do on online science video in the educational world is explanation. And that's what I'll focus on today. But there could be many other kind of missions for your science communication project, but it's really important that you understand what you're trying to accomplish before you begin, because there's different tactics and different strategies that will come into play. Especially in the Sigma's Eye Student Research Showcase, you'll definitely be explaining for the most part. So that's what we'll talk about today. That's what I do. It's not enough to just tell people to explain how something works. If you just tell them how something works, the information rarely sticks with them. Derek Muller from Veritasium, another YouTube channel, recently did a hangout with Sigma Xi, and I really recommend people check that out and check out some research that Derek's done on how these science communication strategies work. It's really not enough to just say, okay, here, this is a really amazing metaphor and logically sound explanation of how far the moon away is from the Earth. We really need to do more than that. You need to make your audience aware of what they don't know, either by identifying a misconception, showing them some strange and unexplained observation, and only then will your experiment or your science really have lasting impact with them. So it's what you would normally do in identifying the problem as you would in the abstract, or when you're creating that hypothesis. Really share that experience of why you're asking this question with the audience. You want this to begin a journey with them, to begin a story with them about why they want to know, to start to build some suspense. Now, again, just explaining something into your camera does not an effective video make, and it's made more difficult because we're making these videos online, and online video is not the same as video that might play somewhere else, whether that's on television, whether that's it's kind of what we do in films, or even what people would do in miniseries and documentaries and things like this. In the days of television, or even in radio before that, programmers had this benefit of captive audiences. There was only a handful of stations or channels, and things were broadcast at very specific times and had to be viewed at that specific time. Audiences on the internet are not captive audiences. I think during the Sigma Xi showcase that people are a bit lucky because the judges do have to come watch the videos that people will be creating, but this isn't the case with general audiences, and I think it's really important to respect and understand the challenge that exists online. On any given YouTube page, when people are watching a video, there are sometimes dozens of these little boxes that they can click on to go to other things. Ads and suggestions will pop up around this video, begging them to do anything else but watch that video. So you need to take your story if they have thousands of things to click on, you have to make content that keeps them there. And to get that message out, you want to deliver it in an amount of time that they're willing to invest. And you'll be making short videos for the Sigma Xi research showcase, but this is a general lesson to basically carve it down and chip it away and make it as long as it needs to be, but no longer. And that will be different for every project, but to be conscious of that. And so speaking of getting your audience to invest, these are the questions of how we keep them with us once they start watching. And this is where the storytelling aspect of making science videos comes into play. And one of the biggest things I see with students trying to communicate their research is that they treat it like a visual version of a research paper instead of a story. And when you're communicating research to people who, even if they're scientists who aren't in your field, it can be completely foreign to them in the language. And you really need to create a story that helps it not only make sense, but give them context and meaning and value. Switch over here. So I view my approach as the approach of an investor. How to keep people with you once you start watching. A big way to do this is to give them characters. You're a character in your research, so are your colleagues. So are the things that you're studying, whether you're studying interesting organisms or if you're doing an ecological study in the field, the animals or organisms you're studying there. Their machines can be characters. The people that you're working with and the challenges that you face. But you also want to create this into a story. It's another investment, giving them a beginning and a middle and an end that builds suspense. That's investment. Giving them some entertainment, whether that's in humor or you know, references to things on the internet that they might think are cool. That's investment. Giving them some sort of tension or emotion or suspense. You know, you didn't arrive at this result by plucking it out of thin air. It didn't work the first or the 50th time that you did it. This kind of suspense is an investment. And after these steps, after these investments, that's when they will be more willing to wait around for the payoff, which is what we're all hoping that they'll get to. To boil this down into to stay away from the greatest sin that I see is to write the book and not the book report. If don't give them something else to do besides just going back to, you know, read the research paper. The video really serves a very different purpose. So one of the biggest questions I get is, how can people actually start doing this? Like, video seems like such a big and intimidating and frightening thing for them to get into. And frankly, like the easiest way to get into this is to just do it. As the old Nike slogan says. There's a great Robert Krulwich commencement speech given to a journalism school actually in 2011. This is Robert Krulwich from Radiolab, one of the greatest science storytellers that we have, who has this motto: there are some people who don't wait. This is his philosophy about science journalism, to do the things that he was passionate about and not wait for permission to do them. Obviously, don't put yourself in jeopardy, not that kind of permission, but get out there and get your boots on the ground and just start doing this. I know it can be pretty intimidating, but I highly recommend that people watch this. So I put this short link down there if people want to jot that down, and you can watch that later. So, you know, people that are if you're a scientist, if you're taking part in the Sigma Xi showcase, you know, you are extremely intelligent. You can figure out things like astrophysics or molecular biology or computer programming. I know it can seem intimidating for the technical aspects of putting together a video and editing it and crafting this thing together, but if you can figure out those things, I guarantee you that you can figure out how to edit a video together. This is within reach. Luckily, good enough software for most of this comes with your computer. Good enough stuff to do this. You can obviously pay more and get more expensive software, things like the Adobe software like Premiere or Final Cut X from Apple. There's many options out there, but most computers come with software that can do this, and most of us carry around an HD camera with us all day long. So you have these things, and these have really great, not great, but usable voice recorders in here as well. So most of us have these tools with us all the time, and if you look at people who've been successful on YouTube and this the biggest video site out there in delivering their message and creating a following, a lot of them did this with no more than an iPhone sitting in front of them on their bedroom desk and sharing their stories with the world. So I hope people wouldn't be too intimidated by the technical aspects of this. But the best way to watch or to learn how to make good science video is to watch a lot of online video about science. So that is what we're going to do right now. Hopefully I'll be able to get this screen share to work. I've been able to pull up some of the past videos from the Sigma Xi Research Showcase, and I just want to kind of show what people have done in the past. Not so much critique, but give some feedback on what I've seen as what is good and what people should watch out for. So let me screen share over here to the videos, and hopefully we'll get this to work. Okay, and so this is Catherine's she was the graduate student winner from last year.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Ecology.
So Catherine's got a very good setup here for introducing her research. She's set the camera down. She's not holding it in her hand. She's got good lighting. Probably just using a window or something that's right next to her. She's introduced herself very clearly, and then proceeds to tell people about her research.
Competition between species. I'm sure you're all familiar with intra-specific competition or interactions within a species.
So as Catherine's going on here, she's beginning to introduce some larger words, some larger scientific concepts, and these are where I would caution people to be careful that you are able to translate that language. Things that might be very familiar to you, like intraspecies competition in this video, could be completely foreign even to other biologists. This is an opportunity for you to take time to put captions or to really define what these terms mean, because if you lose someone in context in the early part of the video, if they can't get past that introduction and what this is about, then none of the rest of the video will make sense. So always exercise caution when it comes to terms that might seem familiar to you, and don't be afraid to explain those to people.
I'm going to give you some examples of competition, show you my study system, and hopefully convince you that this is an important concept to study in ecology.
So she, set out her goal there that this was an important system for that she wanted to convince people of the importance of this system. So a nice, very clear mission for this video, which is really great to set out.
There are two types of competition. In interference competition, individuals directly interact with each other. These interactions are often aggressive and are often over resources. In contrast, during exploitative competition, individuals consume the same resource but not necessarily physically interact with each other. A classic example is Darwin's finches, where one species diverged into many species over resource competition.
So this is an excellent use of visuals to aid in the storytelling. This is one of the cardinal sins of video is to do too much too much telling and not enough showing. You really want to show and not tell. A lot of these images are moved by very fast, and then there's still some terminology that's coming in that might be confusing to people. So again, just a reminder to step back and make sure people are getting the right context out of these things.
Very amount. I also found that territories overlap between species, so it did not appear that they partitioned habitat. Next, I wanted to look at exploitative competition. Did these two species eat the same thing, or did they diverge in diet where they coexisted?
So this is a really great example of I think a really good combination of the visual and the research report. It's a little bit guilty of the book report. Not identifying what the conflict was, and there's no kind of that emotional investment, but a really good blend of the visuals along with the information. And some caution when you're using visuals is to be very careful about where you're getting these things from. To worry about permissions. There's lots and lots of reading and information that you can look at about things like fair use and what is legal to use on the web. But do take care to make sure that you're either seeking permission from people that you're using media from, whether if it's not from your own work, as well as looking for things like Creative Commons licensed, which is widely available in places like Wikipedia. So we'll look at another video, look at maybe some more technical aspects of this. So this is the 2013 grad finalist, or maybe the winner.
How do starlings form these beautiful undulating patterns? One might think that there's a single hive mind that organizes the bird centrally, but these starlings actually follow simple local rules like align with, stay with, and avoid flying into neighbors. But from simple rules at the level of the individual, these global patterns emerge at the scale of many. People show similar behaviors. People form collective waves at sports games. People form long streams in crowds, etc. Unlike birds, however, we know human beings organize in non-spatial senses as with attitudes or beliefs. Just as people may align directions of travel, they can align choices.
Where you sit in the cafeteria is crucial because you got everybody there. You got your freshmen, ROTC guys, preps, JV jocks.
Like in the scene in Mean Girls, people form groups, preps with preps, geeks with geeks, jocks with jocks. This happens in local bodies. Take Congress. Democrats tend to vote with Democrats, and Republicans with other Republicans. Take the U.S. Supreme Court. It's often described as between liberals and conservatives.
this is a fantastic example of how to let the visuals do the work. This is a visual medium. This is an amazing example of a hook. That shot of the bird at the beginning really makes people want to know what they're looking at. It draws emotion out of the viewers, and it's a wow moment, and very clearly identifies what that observation is and what we're going to explain throughout the rest of this. So as we move forward to when Eddie is
the legitimacy of opinions, the famous example being Brown versus Board, where segregation was ruled unconstitutional. We know from records that Chief Justice Warren pushed for a unanimous decision because he knew that's what would send an important signal to the country.
So this is a good shot again. It's nicely framed, but Eddie is. I would recommend that people try to look at the camera. And it's very difficult to sort of get through some of these things that you'll write down to explain these complex concepts, but it can be a little disengaging for the viewer if you're staring off the screen that way. And don't be afraid to use cuts and to break these things up into individual lines and lace them together. And you'll see these techniques used in a lot of online videos where they'll cut to cut from line to line. This can be a little bit distracting for people to look off screen. But you also notice how the audio in this video is very clear. After we're done, I can go through some very specific tips about if people would like to ask specific questions about things like audio, about some of what I can recommend for people. But this matches up well and doesn't distract you from the video itself, between what we call that voiceover, the narration happening over the first part, and then this later part. It's really nice quality. Video is at least half of the battle, or audio is at least half the battle when it comes to video. So then we'll move on to the 2013 undergraduate video, which uses an animation tool, which is a little bit interesting for people. This is a publicly available animation tool, but some people might not be comfortable being on the camera that much, or have trouble with their visuals. This is a good alternative. But we'll figure out how we do this.
Hi, my name is Whaley Lang. I'm an undergraduate student researcher at LaGuardia Community College. For the last 2 years, I've been studying under the mentorship of Dr. Preeti Radhakrishnan. My mentor and I both love insects, and with her expertise in fruit fly behavior and fertility, our lab has been studying the effects of antioxidants on male fertility. I'm in my last year at LaGuardia working towards a bachelor's in biology so that I can continue studying insects. Now, here's an animated summary of my research project.
So a very good introduction until we get to that last line. And I would again just caution people to beware of not necessarily giving an animated summary of your research, but also to explain why the research itself is important. Because this isn't the book report. You want to make this a little bit of the book.
My research project tests whether antioxidants successfully boost male fertility. A strain of fruit flies, called Drosophila melanogaster, was used as a model organism. Virgin male flies were fed antioxidants for 4 days. Antioxidants are substances found in foods like blueberries and pomegranates. Control subjects were fed ethanol-enriched diets without antioxidants.
So I'll stop it there for a moment just to take a break with. I think we've all been in that slideshow, that PowerPoint presentation before, seminars and things like that, where we get a little frustrated with the speaker for sort of reading off of the slides. And we want to make sure when we're doing any video project that we're giving the viewer a reason to actually watch. If they could just read through a slideshow, then why are we making this video for them? In this video, I think, although it uses a nice publicly available animation tool, which is nice and helps you build something that's really could be visually engaging. Most of what ends up being shown on the screen there is just a written version of the script. So really make those visuals accentuate or enhance the script. Don't just mirror what you're saying. We'll do one more here from one of the high school entries in 2013. Being a high school student, I'm sure that that's why this one was in black and white.
Hello,
It had to
everyone.
be extra
My name's
dramatic.
Jayon Lee. I'm from the North Carolina School of Science and Math in Durham, and my project is in chemistry and physics. It is on improving water electrolysis by optimizing the surface area design of the electrodes themselves. Now, let's back up a moment. What is water electrolysis? Water electrolysis is when you put a lot of electricity into water in order to split hydrogen and oxygen into its component parts. Since water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen put together, it takes a large amount of energy to break the bonds and turn them into gas.
So that's an excellent example of how to take something that, by this time in his experiment, is extremely just basic to him, a very elementary concept, but taking time to make sure that, since it's so critical to the rest of the experimentation, is what it hinges on, to make sure that everyone coming into this video understands very clearly what that process means.
Now, what's the big picture here? If we can make this process of mining hydrogen from water using electricity, we can produce what is hydrogen gas fuel. Now, hydrogen gas is 100% clean, burns, turns into water, and is basically abundant everywhere. 70% of this world is covered in water, right? Now, how do we harness this gas? The amount of energy that it takes to split water is relatively high compared to the amount of energy that we can acquire from burning some things like fossil fuels. And we got to compete with that. We need to make water electrolysis more efficient in terms of cost and energy output than fossil fuels can provide today. You know?
So I think that this is, as I hope everybody can tell by this point, I think one of the best written submissions of any of the videos that we've seen, and any that I've looked through from the past things I showcases, that could be really, really accentuated, though, with some use of the visuals. That one kind of funny angle there, looking down at the camera, is a little bit strange. So to take care that pulls me out of a video like that otherwise has great elements of why this is important, and explaining the value, and why this persuasion, why this story is meaningful. But I get very pulled out of it thanks to the visual choices that are made there. Now, there are so many angles between dealing with the technical aspects of getting good audio, or where to find images, what kind of considerations to take with your camera and editing, that I would hope people get to when we get to the Q&A section here in a moment. But you know, the real point here is to experience for yourself as much online science video as possible. I'm going to give a large list of some of my favorite places to watch online science video to Heather, so people can follow up with these later. That has been my greatest educational experience when it comes to online video, is to just watch as much as I can, and to learn from that, to emulate it, to use it in my own work as influence and something to strive for, and kind of getting tricks for my own storytelling that I don't think I would have been able to develop by myself. The point is that you should tell a story, and not just write the book report. And there is not really a better story than science. You know, you've done all the hard work. Now you get to have a little bit of fun with it. And with that, I think I'll turn it back over to see if we want to answer some questions from the audience. But hopefully that's been a valuable lesson in storytelling for all of you.
Sure, thanks, Joe. Thanks for those examples. We do have some questions coming in from the audience. Lindsay is asking about the animation tool that was used in that undergraduate video. What was it?
Yes, this is... I'm going to flip on over to her Vimeo. Of course, it's not in there. I'll have to look for this one up. I have used this before, but if you'd like, I can follow up with what that is. But another option I would recommend for people to check out a channel a lot of people are familiar with, called Minute Physics, also Minute Earth, which does nothing more than that same kind of animation on actual just computer printer paper with Crayola markers, with a camera facing down over the top of the page. And it's about a $5 to $10 setup to just sketch stick figures that can be really kind of endearingly simple. Minute Physics and Minute Earth are two channels that do that, and I will find that animation tool so it can go to the resources below the video when we're done.
Okay, sounds good. And Kevin is asking, do you find background music helpful or distracting? Any good sources of where to get background audio and how to use it?
Yes, so music can be extremely good or extremely bad depending on how it's used. Some of the videos, it's really important to take care of how loud that music is, first of all. We'll get to where you can find it in a moment, but it can, for parts of the video where there's no speech, you'll notice that the audio will become a little bit louder. Most of these editing tools will let you adjust that volume on the fly, but to take care that when you're speaking over it, that isn't muddled or distracted, that you're not distracting from your dialogue with that music. But it can really be a useful tool to build emotion and to set the tone for something. You know, if you're not a thespian who can create the emotion with your own voice, it can really kind of help people to set the tone of the video there. But yes, if not used correctly, if you're not paying close attention to that volume and how it's distracting, it can hurt you more than it can help you. There are a number of places to find music these days. If you're making your video on YouTube, YouTube has it's called a royalty-free music library that you can go select tracks that they have licensed and they make available for use on YouTube. You can go down. Vimeo as well has a music store that you can get a lot of free music, tour through, download them, and put them into your own videos. You're looking for things that are called royalty-free and public domain music, and that can get a little bit complicated. But Vimeo and YouTube have started to actually create libraries of music that's really useful for people. That's been a great thing for them. Definitely do not use music that is owned by someone else. That is any commercially copyrighted music will actually probably get your video if you upload it to YouTube so that you can put it on your Sign's iPage or wherever you're doing these projects. They have software that scans for that music, and you'll actually probably get your video automatically deleted because they're able to tell if it's copyrighted. So be very careful with those sorts of things. That actually leads into image use too quite a bit. The first video we watched had a lot of visuals, a lot of great nature photography and things that were examples of the organisms that she was talking about. But it's very important that you give some sort of credit, I think, where those are coming from, whether it's with tiny little captions or something you're going to put underneath the video, to make sure that you're taking care to make that you have permission to use these things. Just because an image is on the internet doesn't mean that it's free to use, even if you put the person's name next to it. A lot of these things are paid to license. So I would recommend going to places. There's actually a Creative Commons, Creative Commons is a licensing system that allows people to put their work out there for various kinds of public use, as long as credit is usually given to their name and whoever put it up there. But there's a Creative Commons search tool that's at search.creativecommons.org that will let you find, basically filters Google Images for things that are Creative Commons licensed. A lot of those will end up coming from Wikipedia. Again, just because it's on Creative Commons doesn't mean that you don't have to credit the person who made it. It just means that you have a way to use it for free.
Would you say that crediting is also a good idea for things that are in the public domain?
Yes, absolutely. Certain things in the public domain are there because they're very old. Say, like the story Frankenstein or something like that. But it's still necessary, not only a best practice, but actually even for things that are Creative Commons licensed, is actually in the license, legally speaking, you still usually need to give credit for that. So be very sensitive to that. It's not only impolite, it can kind of lead to some legal issues. Although I'm not a lawyer and I'm not giving you legal advice.
Okay, we have a question from Meredith. She asks, how do you promote your videos to increase your viewership?
Well, this would be a good time to talk about the concept of viewership, what it means to get a lot of people to watch your video. I've been very lucky to have an audience, a large audience, where tens, to sometimes hundreds of thousands of people or more watching my videos. And it can be very tempting and intimidating to go onto places like YouTube and see big science channels and say, oh my, I'm never going to be able to make a video that's going to get like 10, 20, or 1,000 or 1,000,000 views. And then when you do make something, maybe a few hundred people watch it, and you can get kind of discouraged. The way I think about it is say you were giving a presentation at your school or to your colleagues. You might be talking to 2 dozen, and if you got 50 people or 100 people to watch your video, that's several times more than would be experiencing your science communication as if you were doing it in your hometown. And if it's good, it can be thousands. 1,000 people is a lot of people. 500 people is still a lot of people. Just picture 500 people sitting in your living room with you, listening to you. So that's one thing. So to sort of kind of correct people's expectations, that you don't need to make a viral video every time you make a science video. But what I do to promote my videos is just kind of taking advantage of all the social networks that are out there, things like Facebook and Twitter, Tumblr and things like that. And not only just sending them out into the void, but really trying to be a member of those communities and getting to know other people that are on there. Places like Google Plus actually have really strong science communities, although people like to give it a hard time. Sending tweets out to people in your field, people that work on the same kind of topics, people that write about, journalists maybe that write about the topics that you're making your videos about. Even your friends and family can send that stuff out, and that can expand it throughout their networks into dozens or hundreds of people. So yeah, it's Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and things like that.
Speaking of Twitter, we had a question that was left on the Google Hangout event page before the Hangout, and it was from Christina, and she said, I have an account for Twitter, but haven't seemed to pick up on how to use it effectively. I've seen others do very well using Twitter as a means for effective communication of conservation concerns and getting people involved in scientific discussion, but I don't really understand what it takes to get to that point using Twitter.
But we could probably do a whole half hour on Twitter and things like that by itself, but I found that there's no real way to effectively learn how to use these social networks without getting in there and playing around a little bit. There's a very low penalty for experimenting. We all like to experiment. We're scientists. We're used to that idea. I would suggest that people get on there and begin talking to people. It's a little difficult to know, like in this specific example, what you want to accomplish and to be effective. But I do have kind of a motto of stealing influence by watching people, and that if you see somebody who's doing good work in conservation issues on Twitter, see how they tweet, see the kinds of things that they tweet, see when they tweet, see who they're talking to, and start to either insert yourself into those conversations. I mean, there's a real person usually on the other end of that computer that could have a conversation with you. It can seem intimidating to jump in, but I would really recommend just like a cold lake, dive on in with both feet. It's much easier if you do it quickly. And then once you begin to experiment, you'll start to see for your own work how people respond to it, what times of day, where these communities exist, what sort of topics they're responding to more than others, and you can guide your own work. But it's very difficult to sort of like make a strategy and then have that work forever. You have to kind of constantly be experimenting with it. So just do it again kind of comes into play.
Okay, another question is, how do you narrow down your topics? I work at an oceanographic institution, and we have so many great stories, it's hard to narrow our list down to the most interesting and compelling.
Well, if you have any kind of audience from other things like doing a blog or having a Facebook page, I think it's great. Or if you're an institute like that, if you can ask people, I think, what they'd like to see. You can sort of say, which of these things, like, have them take a poll. What's most interesting to you? Obviously, anything having to do with baby animals is great. Weird things about the brain. We all see these are kind of great things. narrowing down topics is the most difficult problem. There are so many great stories. It's better to have that problem than the opposite. You know, for me, I've gotten a pretty. I do listen to my audience. I read their comments. They're mostly nice, and I listen to what they want to see and what they want to hear about. I see what's done well in the past. I pay attention to what people have and haven't liked, and I let that guide my future work. But most importantly, I make things that I find interesting. If I'm not passionate about it, if I'm not enjoying it, if I'm not fascinated by the question, and that's going to come through in the video, and I think it's going to be very thin, and it's going to be a very weak kind of piece of science communication. That, you know, I'm not acting in there. These are things that are genuinely interesting to me. But you're lucky that you have too many options. But yeah, usually the audience is your best feedback tool. Places like YouTube and all these social media sites let you get really good feedback on that. So just ask.
Okay, going back to talking about images and copyright and what can we use, Ben's asking, I'm pulling it up here, what are the boundaries of fair use for image use in science videos like this? So I think he's asking maybe if it's not in public domain or it's not royalty free and it's not obvious, what can you do for fair use kind of things?
So I'll hesitate to give you any really specific advice on fair use. Fair use is still a very open question when it comes to many of these things. I always recommend that people be conservative with how they're looking at fair use. What this means to people who aren't aware of this is that there are cases for when for using small bits of media, you know, whether it's pictures or clips of video, can be okay if you're for certain kinds of content. So one example would be if a news reporter is on location in a grocery store and they're standing in front of a wall of trademarked products like Coca-Cola bottles. They don't have to blur out those bottles because that's an understood use of fair use. Now, if you were making a video about why cola drinks can be why high fructose corn syrup, what that can do to the body, say, and you use the Coca-Cola bottle as an example in there, then that would probably not, under most people's definition, be okay. That's you know, using their brand. There's so many different angles of this. When it comes to fair use for science, though, I mean, some of the general rules are if you are making a direct commentary about something, but just because you're talking about ants and you go use an entomologist's photography as part of that, that's not a fair use of that. You're preventing that person from making their living on selling their photographs. I can kind of send, for some resources later, there's a few links, but if you have a university office, many universities have sort of best practices for fair use on websites, and I can send over a few things like that, but it's a very legal kind of concern that it's difficult to give you any hard and fast rules about, but my general rule is to be very conservative about that and always try to get permission wherever possible.
Great, okay. Kevin is asking about the good free video editing software, which you mentioned at the beginning, but could you mention it again? Him and Ben are talking on the side. Everybody can see, and Ben shared a link to some video editors, so thanks for sharing that, Ben.
So I'm a Mac user, and all Macs all come with iMovie these days, which has been, you know, totally more than enough for most YouTubers and online video makers to make their their creations. It does basically everything you need, and Windows, I think, does have some basic filmmaking software to do things like that as well. Then you can get to the next step up. That if you're a student, often you can get cheaper licenses for things like the Adobe software. Things like Premiere is one of theirs. And Apple as well has other products like Final Cut. But you know, look at the software that came with your computer, and most computers these days are coming with some sort of basic video editing software that can take clips and put cuts and build a timeline like that. It's even some phones now, actually, like iPhones, will come with the iMovie software on there, and you're like, why would you can actually edit like on your iPad or on your iPhone or many other tablet and kind of mobile devices on there too. These things exist on there, and they're pretty new. A lot of people just aren't aware of them.
Okay. We have another question that says, any advice for presenters who might feel that their research is less visual?
Yeah, so it's not often that I find something that can't be illustrated visually. This is the great search for the metaphor, as we say, finding some way. If you don't study an animal, you can't point to that animal and show a picture of those birds or something like that. Having competition as part of your experiment, this is when you need to search for a metaphor. So you can communicate your research, and I usually often, and how it's meaningful by relating it to something else that you can show. As people work in mathematical concepts, statistics or game theory or things like this, invent thought experiments. Einstein invented thought experiments to explain complex concepts that weren't visual, so that people could visualize them riding on a beam of light as if it was a train going through a tunnel and things like this. These are metaphors to take things that aren't inherently visual and make them something that you can see. That's part of the storytelling process. It's not always easy to do. Your research might not seem like it is visual, but I would really recommend, people sit down and try to look for, if it's not something that you can point directly to, like a big machine or a baby animal, then figure out a way to make that into something that's visual.
Okay. And we've gone through the questions that the audience has submitted, so if anybody else has more questions, keep submitting those until we're done here at 2 o'clock Eastern. But one thing that we haven't talked about too much is Tumblr. So I was wondering if you could explain what Tumblr is for people who aren't familiar with it and give any tips that you might have about that.
Sure. So Tumblr is a social blogging site. It's kind of a hybrid of something like Twitter, that things are running by in a timeline, and people that you can follow and subscribe to, along with all of the tools that you can build any blog with that let you share videos and text and images in a very easy and attractive way. So I've been using Tumblr for longer than I can remember now, maybe 5 years, and what it's more like the important part of taking something like Tumblr. What's so meaningful about it is it's not like a better blogging tool. It doesn't do things that Blogger or WordPress or any of these infinite places that you can go create these kinds of things, Squarespace and all this stuff. It's not better than those, but what it is it's social. This is a community of people, and one of the most important lessons in science communication that I learned thanks to Tumblr was figuring out the language that's spoken by the people that you're trying to communicate your science with, and giving it to them in language that's meaningful to them. So in a place like Tumblr, that means things that are short, that they can read in a short amount of time as they're scrolling through a page that has lots of content. It means things that are image oriented, that are very visual, that are really engaging, that are going to jump off of the page. They're not there to read kind of long blocks of text. Using things like animated GIFs and YouTube video clips. And kind of like speaking the language of internet culture, we have a lot of memes and jokes and things like that come in there, and then like translating those into science and using those as okay, you understand the show Adventure Time, which is hilarious. So if I can make a joke that references Adventure Time and then something that references science, then that's 2 pieces of value for that person and not just one. It helps to give them context and confidence, and it relates it to something else that they're passionate about. It reaches out into a community because there's already a group of fans around something like a TV show, Game of Thrones or something like that. So I did a whole video about Game of Thrones and some science posts about things that happen in Game of Thrones. How could we explain them using science? And those are just basic scientific concepts that I could talk about how things orbit and how that creates seasons, but that doesn't, maybe that's not as meaningful as saying, well, this is how it works in the universe that you already care about. So things like Tumblr can give you access to groups of fans and kind of show you how to treat the people who are taking who you're communicating your science to as three-dimensional beings that don't just care about science, they care about other things. And when you add those other things to it, then your science communication will be more effective.
Okay. We have a question from Janice, and she asks, how long should a video be to keep people interested? How long is too long?
Your video should be as long as it needs to be to tell your story and no longer. There's no magic number on the internet of what the right length of video is. Some videos are a minute and a half long. Some videos are 12 to 13 minutes long. It matters, what's useful for your story. I'd say a good target to aim for people that are starting out is somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes to really set that as a goal. And if that'll help you pick a topic that's appropriate for that time to sort of learn how to take a message and say, I'm going to chip away everything that I don't need to deliver exactly the message that I want to deliver, and I'm going to do it in no extra time. I'm not going to waste the viewer's time. I'm not going to trick myself into putting things in there that don't belong there. It can be very helpful to work in kind of restrictions like that. So yeah, aiming for 2 to 3 minutes to start off with. My videos are about 5 to 6 minutes long now. You're obviously not going to make like a half an hour long video and expect people to watch it unless you're doing an amazingly entertaining Google Hangout like this. But there is no magic number there. What you will see, though, is again recommending that you watch a lot of different channels and see how people that do long videos fill that time, and how people who do short videos fill that time. It's really about doing what's appropriate, and practice will make perfect for that.
And like Joe said, he's going to be sending over some resources that we can put in the section below the video on YouTube so that you can check out some good sources that he recommends so that you can try to emulate those and learn from those. So Joe, you've talked about the importance of people just diving into the social media, just getting their feet wet. And I'm wondering, for the people who are thinking about investing that time and energy into learning this new technology, where do you think it's going, and where do you think the future holds for all of this?
Nobody knows where it's going. Yeah. So what we do know is that we can't say like this social network is going to be bigger than this one, and this one's the one that's going to win or something like that. What we do know is that these things are just becoming more and more integral to our life. Twitter is just a new version of the newspaper, or the Facebook is just our new water cooler where we're hanging out and talking about things. These are just things that are that have just in a few years become so ubiquitous as ways that we communicate, that the lesson I would urge people to take away from that is that this is the new way of communicating. It's not another way of communicating. This is just for a certain generation of people, and which will become a larger percentage of the total population over time. This is where people are. This is where people are talking. We don't know where it's going to go. Maybe we'll have a social network that's just, we keep boiling it down to shorter and shorter units. So that's the trend right now. So maybe we'll just have a social network where it's like one word that you get to send out, like or something like that. But yeah, it's the ubiquity of this. The fact that everything lives on our device now that we carry around. That's the trend.
Okay, we have 1 more minute, so I'll take one more question from Ryan. And the question is, would you recommend trying to create a brand, as in making the same type of videos for all of your topics, or do you try to tailor each video to its content?
Ooh, that's a tough one. When you're dealing in a place like YouTube, consistency can be really helpful for if you want people to be coming back time and time again. That can be very comforting for them. Consistency means things like putting up videos on a regular schedule if you want to build a channel where you're doing regular, frequent science communication. Giving them a name that they can remember. Often giving them a person that they can remember. I'm a part of my videos. Not everyone does that. Giving them a style and kind of a way of making those videos, what the visuals are going to look like each time. making all of these little bits of familiarity gives them just a little bit more comfort, like a little warm blanket when they're watching that. You know, making a brand and things like that isn't going to work for every single science communication project. Maybe you're in a lab and you just want to make one really good video about the research that you're doing that can live on your lab's website forever. That can be really great, and then those things won't really come into play there. But if you want to do this consistently, yes, those things that can kind of build comfort and a relationship with your audience, do all of those.
Great. Okay, well, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Joe. It was really helpful. And we will be having this video on our YouTube channel, and we're also going to be posting it on our showcase page. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.